Today, I'm excited to have Glenn Swire with me, who is the Director of Marketing Integration at the Imagine Group. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking the time. Glenn, before we get started, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience, tell us a little bit about your background and sort of how you got to be where you are today at the Imagine Group in terms of focusing on direct marketing.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I mean, reality is I can't get into all the details because believe it or not, I started at age 5. Literally, it was before the age of, child labor laws, I guess. But my dad had a print shop in our basement. And even as a kid, you could hit the off button when a machine jammed up, right? Um,
Yeah.
so started with that. Been blessed over the years to work in tactile marketing to start. Tried to get out of mailing and print for a little bit, and actually spent a couple of years of my life. I spent some time at the Walt Disney Company in the market research group, which gave me a good balance. I became a corporate trainer for them, which then led to 3.5 years being able to give back at Erie Community College in Buffalo, New York. I'm a Buffalo native. Go Bills. Having that classroom, which we could talk a little bit later, helped balance me out. So I've served in the roles of marketing directors at a nonprofit, uh, as well as all of the different components in the operational side of our business. So my current role is really I'm helping clients reach the right person at the right time with in the right way. I think is the best summary.
Yeah, well, that's always the case, right? It's always about engagement, customer experience. It's interesting. I'd forgot that you and I had that same history of growing up in a family printing business. You and I talked about that at Explore one time, and I completely forgotten that. So that's really cool in our basement as well. And yeah, that's a really interesting connection.
Well,
Um,
and there's something
so
about that though, Andy.
yeah,
When you grow up in that environment, you never stop having that owner mentality.
right.
You always look more holistically. And I would say is anytime I have an opportunity to hire somebody that comes from a family business background, amazing. They're usually multitaskers that have amazing customer service skills because they really do remember the fact that if I have
Yep.
dinner tonight is based on whether or not we get this job out.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting is the little village town where my parents started a company was a farming community,
Hmm.
and strangely outside of Madison, Wisconsin. And so all of my friends, were farmers, and before school, after school, they'd be out milking cows, and I was helping run the print shop. But it was the same sort of approach of, hey, this is what we do to keep our family afloat and put food on the table. And that continued, I mean, up until my 20s when I finally left and started a company, which eventually was acquired by Icon Office Solutions. But yeah, that progression and starting in I guess it was the mid 70s, 1977, 78, which was when everything was analog. And then you probably saw the same thing, right? Where you transitioned into
Yep.
sort of the early phases of digital. And it was a really interesting time to grow up in the printing industry to see that complete shift from pure analog to what became 20 years later almost entirely digital. I mean, first phase of digital, right? Laser printers, Docutext, that kind of stuff.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to put a pin in too, is that, we as in the printing industry, we've been digital, you know, really since the 80s and 90s,
Oh yeah.
right? I mean,
Yep.
we all talk about digital marketing now. It's like, well, guys, 1984, you had those first Macs were really designed with topography in mind, right? So
Right.
we've been
Oh yeah.
digital for a long time.
The postal service and the
Yeah.
mail. Rates just went up 78 cents now for first class stamp on Sunday. We got a new postmaster. Are we screwed? I mean, where's this train headed in your view? I mean,
All
you've been in this marketing, direct mail for quite a while.
So,
What's
all
up?
right. So to kind of summarize your question in a different way is I'm doing a lot more college presentations. I'm doing a lot more work in the postal customer councils, um, and they have me come in, and probably one of the speeches that they ask me to give the most is titled is there still hope?
Yeah. For the
You
for the
know,
postal service or just hope in general?
yeah, right. Well, we'll talk more specifically as it relates to direct mail and marketing and the postal service, et cetera.
Yeah.
Um, and where I love to, especially when I'm dealing with the students, where I love to start is with a question. Let's look, let's time work back. We're celebrating this month in July, the 250th anniversary of the post office.
All right. That's right.
The first postmaster general of the post office was who? It was Ben Franklin, right?
Thanks, right. Yeah.
So the question that I ask the students, why would a guy who basically reinvented eyeglasses, right? Changed the way we cook with the Franklin stove, discovered electricity, the list goes on and on. He's one of our founding fathers. Why would that guy take time out of his busy day to run the post office? And
Yeah.
the answer comes back to he had a newspaper and he was a businessman and he knew that the best way to reach his customers was through a strong postal system. So even though
Yeah.
he had a lot of other things on his plate, he went ahead and jumped in and says, listen, let's make this happen. So when you look at the fact that even though we're not 50% of the world's population, still half the mail volume of the world is generated inside, the four walls of America. Um,
Yeah.
why is that? Well, first off, it's part of our culture, but second, most importantly, from our very founding, it was all about businesses connecting with their customers. It's the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're a big box retailer or a small mom and pop, hardware store on Main Street, USA. You all have equal access to the mailbox, right? Um,
Yep.
so kind of come close full circle on this. You know, when you look at the strength of when the post office was the best, it was when they core understood the fact that they're really about supporting American businesses. It wasn't until like the the great generation returning from World War II that the post office really got addicted to that first class mail. Uh,
Mm.
and they kind of lost their focus and they became more and more, all right, let's do all of these individual transactions as opposed to more of that business type. And so when I'm looking at the flash reports each week from the post office, there's no doubt mail volumes continue to shrink, but the type of mail that my company does, um, by far, is still maintaining. That marketing mail, business to consumer mail or business to business mail is still holding on. And you're going to say, Glenn, why? Why would that be? And two things. Um, I think we've talked in the past. You have kids. Um, the first time I brought my son to the grocery store, and he was old enough to run away. Right. First thing a kid does is he goes down the aisle and he just starts grabbing everything, touching everything, feeling everything, putting stuff in their mouth. Did anybody have to teach that 2-year-old to do that?
No. That's
No. It's in your DNA that you want to touch things.
right.
That's the reason why I think there's still hope for our marketing channel because at the end of the day, the glass always feels the same,
Yeah.
but there's something about that.
Without print, you don't have the mail, right? That they are inextricably tied.
Yeah.
And how we know that mail volume is declining, but yet I hear stories from folks like yourself that say, yeah, but my business is growing. And this is sort of a great mystery to me that how we have a market that is consolidating, it's compressing, right? But still we have these companies that say, yes, but I'm growing. And I think that's a really fascinating area that I'm going to dig into a little bit more from a research perspective. But I just don't have you had any thoughts on that, particularly this relationship between
Yeah.
print
Well,
volume and mail volume.
no, very true. So here's some of the issues that we have. Um, I grew up in a family business, and I was caught up in the great consolidation. I'll call it that. I don't think there's any official term, but between 1998 and 2000,
Yeah.
um, I believe the printing industry associations at the time said there was something like 47,000 printing companies that went out of business.
Yeah. like that. Yeah.
But when you look at the number of people that was employed in 2000 compared to 1998 in the printing industry, the number was the same. So what
Interesting.
ended, yeah. So what I was seeing in the research that I was reading was you went from an average company size of less than 10 to now companies that were averaging, 150 to 200.
Right. Right.
So all of this consolidation kind of went up. And I think some of that was the digital revolution, but unfortunately, I think a lot of it was the capital requirements.
Yeah.
When my
Stuff's
dad
expensive.
started, oh
Yep.
yeah, my dad started his printing company in our basement. It was a Uncle Jack loaned him $600,
Yeah.
right? Um, when our company, the Imagine Group, started years ago, it was a loan from a couple of relatives for 15 grand.
Yeah.
Now, from a capital standpoint, I can't buy an AM 1250 for $250 on the second market. I got to invest $1.5 million in a digital press.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. My first press was a 360 CD. Yeah. It had about 1 million miles on it when I got it. So, but maybe if you could share a little bit more on your perspective of how you're seeing AI impact the direct marketing space in terms of just developing campaigns and as a tool in the direct marketing space. Where do you see
Oh,
the
yeah.
application for it?
No, that's great. And I think the biggest struggle I see with AI, and I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again, is when we talk about the digital revolution of the late 90s, it was really easy when desktop publishing came out because it affected one department. Management could focus in and say, all right, we're going to buy Quark Express, we're going to get our first Mac, we're going to get our first scanner, we're going
Oh
to get
yeah,
our
I remember
first
those
laser
days.
printer, right?
Oh yeah, I remember those days very well.
And you were
Yep.
able to be, management was able to be singularly focused on one department and kind of go from there, right? Um, when there was other evolutions, direct to plate, or even the concept of, I'm old enough to remember when, estimating was done with charts and in a book, right? And then we had this digital revolution where you had electronic estimating, and again, you could be singularly focused on that one thing. Well, AI is touching everything. So I think there's an issue here of like, how do we focus in on one particular task to get this done? For example, operational wise, I'm hearing stories where a real easy practical step. I got all this equipment on my floor. Why don't I just upload all of my owner's manuals and training manuals into my own GPT so that anytime my pressman has an issue, they could just basically do a chat back and forth and it can search through all of that documentation and instantly come back with, in a few seconds, some suggestions on stuff to fix.
Yeah, go turn this dial or pull this lever or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like how cool is that? Um, the story I love to tell too is this taking this prompting class, and it came back with this training seminar on how do I go ahead and do a marketing campaign. And what was cool about it is my degree in marketing, it came back and said, all right, here's all my call to actions. Here's the things. Here's what I think you should do for a chat. Here's what I think the call should be for this digital ad. And I noticed that nowhere in it did it have any tactile marketing or AKA direct mail. So I asked
Mhm.
ChatGPT, I go, hey, what about direct mail? And of course it came back with absolutely. What was crazy about it, not only did it go back and then rework the marketing campaign and incorporate it in a good omni-channel, it gave suggested taglines, it gave suggested imagery, it gave
Mhm.
suggested color scheme. So the depth of where maybe I'm a small business and I want to just say, all right, is this direct mail piece going to be effective? In the
Right.
past, I used to spend thousands of dollars to have people analyze stuff. You can start now uploading these going, hey, what do you think? Am I missing anything? I did that yesterday for a postcard for a nonprofit and it came back and it said, and it did all the things that I used to do, but it did it in a few seconds. It checked for
Right.
the who, what, when, where, why. Did it have a time? Was it clear where the place was? Did the images match the theme of where I was going? And then it came back and said, hey, I think you need to adjust your tone. It's
Oh,
not as professional enough for the
for this
type of,
audience. Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
So anyway, I could ramble on for hours on it. I I believe that similar to how printers were able to put off going direct to film or direct to plate for a little while, but eventually the people that put it off forever are no longer with us.
Yeah.
We're going to be in the same boat with the toolkit with AI.
What's that?
We've pivoted and now we go into the classroom and we talk about, the concept of what does it take to make a buying decision? Like, what's the difference between today, me being here and I have my money and I cross that threshold, and now I give you the money and you give me the product. And one of the things we talk about is the fact of if information is all what it would take for you to make a buying decision, then Google would have fixed that. You have all the information you need right now to make a buying decision. But we know that I can get from point A to point B with a Yugo, but why do I buy a BMW? Why do I buy a Mercedes Benz? Why do I buy that Honda or whatever
Right.
you're because you're emotionally attached to a particular brand. Why do I go into debt to take that Disney vacation? Because I'm reliving a childhood memory that I have with my parents, right?
Right.
So we know that it takes emotion in order to make that buying decision, really to lock it in. So then let's backtrack, Glenn. Why are you bringing this up? When you do a CAT scan of somebody's brain, um, reading a email, there are certain areas that are excited. When you take the same message in the form of a direct mail piece, not only is there a dramatic increase in the percentage of your brain that's engaged, there's a different area of your brain that's engaged that wasn't engaged before. And oh yeah, by the way, it just so happens to be the same area that elicits emotion. So
Yeah.
now we go, all right, why is this working? Well, if I know I need emotion in order to make that buying decision, doesn't it make sense to use a marketing channel that's already activating that part of your brain?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So we're getting a little bit of science, and one of the issues that we've had in the mailing industry is it's just always worked. So we never put a lot of science behind it. The digital guys have some amazing reports and some amazing
And it's
things
real
that,
time, right? It's almost
yeah,
like right now kind of data. Right.
and so one of my favorite customers said to me, he goes, "Oh my God, thank you so much for telling me that story." I gave him heat maps of where people read their mail. And it's like, oh my God, 50% of people read their mail in the kitchen. No wonder why people love my product. Um, because they already have food on the brain, right? So when they're
Yeah.
reading their mail. So long story short, the comment he made was, um, in the past, um, you know, I didn't have any science behind it and I didn't know why it works. Now I can go in and tell those people they have sexy reports and now I have results plus some science. Anyway, I'm still strong on direct mail. I'll reinforce this again. Um, you know, when I'm out there, especially in the classroom, I'm never saying it's, physical or digital. It's both, right?
Right.
It's the interrelationship between it. When I go to my toolbox, I have a Phillips and a regular and a crescent wrench and spanners, depending on if you're from Europe, right? And you have all of these different wrenches and tools that are in your toolbox, and it would be crazy to think that I'm going to do everything with one tool.
Right.
Um, and I say this as part of my spiel is I believe that somewhere in America, a marketing director is going to be fired this week because the only thing they brought to the table was digital, and the
Right.
audience they needed to reach needed also tactile. And when
Yeah.
I'm seeing people get a healthy relationship between both physical and digital and getting the right message to the right person, they're having success. You know,
Yeah. That's where the
the
magic is right there.
that's the
Absolutely.
magic. There's only 2 to 3 things in your mailbox every day. You get the audience, I mean, you get that.
A couple years ago in New York City, I was actually there for two events. One was a traditional CCM event
Yeah.
with a vendor, very polite, button down ties, quiet, very corporate. Then I walked down the street and went to the Javits Center, and there were 20,000 people going absolutely crazy around customer experience. And I went to the organizer, I went to the analyst relations person, said, "So, who here is talking about paper? Who here is talking about print?" She said, "No one." Nobody,
Yeah.
nothing, zero. And I think that is a miss on the part of the direct marketing and the printing industry, that there's just so much of this fear of, oh, digital, we got to stay away. I'm like, no, if anything, you should head into that storm and you should be engaging the direct marketing and the digital marketing folks head on and bringing that story to them. And I sort of feel like there's this resistance to just say, oh, but if we do that, we're doing a deal with the devil. And it's like, yeah, but you've got to, the direct marketing, direct mailing industry, have a story to tell the digital
Right.
marketing folks. And there seems to be this resistance of engaging at that level. And I just find that really frustrating sometimes, that you can have this building of 20,000 people all excited about customer experience and digital marketing, and nobody's talking about paper or print. I mean, nobody. No sessions, no speakers, no content,
Yeah.
zero about print. Let's forget about putting a stamp on something. Let's focus on parcels and packages as a means to get communications delivered. Do you see something evolving there?
Oh, it's not even evolving. It's there. When we did a campaign a while back and it was all B2B, which is probably the hardest group to reach, right? Because you have gatekeepers and like you don't really necessarily have a direct access to their mailbox because it's going through a room, da 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 da. Um, so even sending a traditional letter sometimes just doesn't break through. So we did, at the time we were known as Classic Graphics, and we rolled out, it was our 30th anniversary, so we chose 30 classic guitars, and we did like a life size, because we also do grand format printing. We
Yeah.
printed these guitars, cut them out, put them in a monster box, and shipped them out. So in the marketing world, we call that a three-dimensional mailer, right?
Yeah.
As length,
Yeah.
width, and height. Um, Amazing response.
Yeah.
Amazing response. I had another guy who was a marketing director, and um, he worked with some of the biggest names in the business. And I won't get too deep into it other than the fact of nobody, when he went on his own as a consultant, no one would call him back. Um, so he went ahead and did the old, hey, why don't I do for myself what I did for all these other customers? Went to Louisville, had 50 custom made Louisville Slugger baseball bats,
Hmm.
put them in a priority mailbox, shipped them out, and he went from zero callbacks to 100% of the people took his call.
Yeah.
There is something about that 3D mailer. Now, for example, if I'm selling you a $10 pizza, can I afford to ship a $100 box? Of course not.
Yeah. So you speak a lot about the sort of the would have been a sort of the campaign, the creative, the coming up with the program for direct marketing. What do you see happening more on the sort of the more operational delivery side in terms of targeting, analyzing data after the
Yeah.
fact, those types of things?
So that is an evolving part of our business. And here's one of the things that I'm really concerned about. If you're saying, Glenn, what keeps you up at night? None of
Yeah.
this. I do sleep well, but one of the concerns I have is our goal for privacy is causing some really interesting challenges for direct marketers. And you're saying, Glenn, what do you mean by that? Well, let's say I have a product and I'm trying to serve, let's say, the Hispanic community. I'll use that as an example.
Right.
You know, and I want to go after them, and use that marketing term. I want to reach them with this particular coupon, etc. There are states right now that are now considering those elements, some basic elements that we used to use as direct marketers. And they're considering it PII, and needs to be locked down. So you can't buy a marketing list that includes things like their heritage, the race, whether or not they have children, potentially their age. I mean, it's getting more and more difficult to
Yeah.
now reach. And it's like, well, wait, on one side, we're being preached to, you know, let's be greener. Let's not just do these spray and pray marketing
Right.
campaigns. Let's only mail to the people
Yep.
that this
Right.
message resonates with. But if I'm not allowed to learn what resonates with them, how do I reach them? So
Yep.
it's getting kind of interesting because
So Glenn, this has been awesome.
oh good.
I'm a believer. Thank you for for educating me. I appreciate that.
This is really great.
And hopefully you'll find it useful in what you do every day, trying to convince people why you're the guy and why they should be working with your company. So
Awesome.
I appreciate your
Thank
time.
you so much.